Yo, yo, yo. What's good, folkers? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're at in the world. Tyrant's Bane here, back at you with another video on March 25th, 2021, on a Thursday. I'm hitting it hard because they hitting it hard. They keep hitting us, I'm going to keep hitting them. So what am I talking about right now? Well, apparently there are 5 key facts about gun violence and the politics of the issue. Okay, so this is from the New York Times. This is an article from the New York Times written by one David Leonhardt. Okay, David Leonhardt. Okay, so he's a New York Times contributor, and he wrote this here enlightening piece. Okay, we're gonna go over it. We're gonna find out what the 5 key facts are. Okay, and I'm gonna give my commentary on it and let you know what I think. All right. All right, cool. So let's get this cracking. It's a doozy. All right. We know which laws work. Okay, so this is before you get to the 5. Okay, this is just like a forward. It's a dismal ritual in American life. A mass shooting occurs, sometimes more than one. In quick succession, the country mourns the victims and nothing changes. I expect the same will happen following the killings at Atlanta and Boulder, Colorado. But it's still worth taking a few minutes to lay out the basic facts about gun violence. The key one is simply this. The scale of gun deaths in the United States is not inevitable. The country could reduce the death toll, perhaps substantially, if it chose to. Let's talk about that real quick. Let's talk about, nothing changing. And let's talk about why nothing changes. The reason nothing changes is because these 20,000 plus gun laws in this country still exist. Gun-free zones still exist. Open carry is restricted in many states. Okay? People are not empowered. People are not given the opportunity to defend themselves by any means necessary, with any means necessary, due to the restrictions. Okay? And even with all that, you still have anywhere from 200,000 to 2 million lives potentially being saved. 200,000 for sure, lives saved with the use of firearms by the normal human being, by the non-criminal, okay? Up to 2 million, okay? And in the very least, 2 million crimes prevented with the use of firearms. 2 million, all right? But that's with 20,000 plus gun control laws on the books. So there's 20,000 in the country, federally and state-wise, okay? So let's get into this. Let's see what they're talking about, okay? 1, the toll approaches pancreatic cancer. Ooh, let's do pancreatic cancer. When gun violence is counted as a single category spanning homicides, suicides, and accidents, it kills about 40,000 Americans a year. That's far behind the country's biggest killers like heart disease. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. About 650,000 annual. Alzheimer's, 125,000. But it's broadly comparable to the toll from many well-known causes of death, including the average flu season, 35,000. Vehicle accidents, 39,000. Breast cancer, 42,000. Liver cancer, liver disease, 43. Or pancreatic cancer, 45,000. So, what's the point? What is the point? Let's talk about the 40,000 deaths by firearm. Many, I think about 26,000, no, more than that. A vast majority of gun deaths are suicides, okay? Suicides. And that would be another disease. That is probably from, one might consider, a disease of mental health, okay? So these are diseases that you're comparing it to, okay? You might want to consider that suicide and even many murders have to do with mental health issues, mental diseases. So, you know what? You might be right to compare it to that. Yeah. You might be right. More guns means more death. That's his number 2 point. That's his number 2 fact. Republican members of Congress often claim otherwise. After the Boulder shooting, John Thune of South Dakota and Senate's second-ranking Republican dismissed calls for restricting gun availability, saying that's not a big appetite among our members to do things that would appear to be addressing it, but actually do anything to fix the problem. But there is overwhelming evidence that this country has a unique problem with gun violence, mostly because it has unique gun availability. Oh, interesting. And then it goes into this chart here, right? I'll leave the link. You guys can go check it out. I might leave the link. I forget that shit. But this is New York Times. If you want to Google it, it's New York Times, 5 key facts about gun violence. And then you'll find it. All right. So this has to do with gun deaths comprise suicides in the chart. Homicides and accidents. All dated from 2017. Okay. So the U.S. has 125, roughly 125 gun deaths per million. Italy has about 26, 27. Canada is, they're all low. They're all low. That's very true. That's very true. Yeah. So it's not just that every other high income country in this world has many fewer deaths and many fewer gun deaths, many fewer guns and many fewer gun deaths. It's also that the United States has, with fewer guns, like California, Illinois, Iowa, and much of the Northeast have fewer gun deaths. Okay. That's bullshit. And when the state or local governments have restricted gun access, deaths have often declined. That's very interesting because these California, Illinois, isn't that where LA and Chicago is? This is bullshit. He didn't provide any proof. He provided the chart when it came to comparing it to other countries, but there's no, he provided nothing for this. That's utter bullshit. He's saying, first of all, Illinois, the state is not very restrictive. Illinois, the state, is not as restrictive as California. You see, much of the Northeast. New York's not on here. New York is one of the most restrictive. New York, New Jersey. New York and New Jersey have a lot of gun deaths cracking. Okay, so you mean to tell me that California, Illinois, and much of the Northeast has less gun violence than, say, has more gun violence than, say, Idaho, Montana, where else could we say? Arizona, Texas, I call bullshit on this one. I'm going to have to look into that. The main lesson that comes out of the research is that we know which laws work. Whatever bullshit. So let's address this here. Second fact. There are 400 million firearms in this country. 400 million. And gun deaths, 40,000. 40,000 gun deaths. 400 million firearms. Now, when you look at that, what's that percentage? Let me get my calculator. Let's look at the percentage of that. So, when you look at 40,000 gun deaths, the hell? When you look at 40,000 gun deaths, right, compared to 400 million firearms in this country, you get 0.01%. 400 million firearms in this country. 400 firearms, but they're only It's a 0.1%. You know what I'm saying? So 0.1%, or 100th of a percent, 0.01%. There's 0.01% deaths compared to the number of firearms in this country. So if more firearms meant more deaths, then why is it that last year, when there were 360 million firearms, how come it's still not? Okay, so let me slow down a little bit. Last year, or the year before that, there were 40,000 gun deaths in that year. but only 350 million firearms. Okay. Now there are about 400. So if we added about 50 million firearms to the country, to the ownership in the country, why is it that an equal percentage, or what do they call that? An equal percentage of gun deaths? Why hasn't that increased? Why hasn't that increased? If 40 mil, if more guns meant more gun deaths, why is it that we don't have more gun deaths on average or for the year compared to the number of firearms that have increased the purchases? You know, last year in about 3 months, 8 million new firearm owners in 3 or 4 months. In an entire year, I think it was about 15 million or something like that. It was a whole lot. But if it were true that more guns meant more death, then we would have more death, as well as the number or proportionate amount of gun deaths would have increased. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Shit. It's bullshit. Another, they're just manipulating data. They're manipulating data. They're lying. And they're not giving you all the data. They're not telling you about how many lives are saved with firearms each year, which are far, far more than the number of deaths. Okay? Far more. And some of those 40,000 can be attributed to someone who was committing a crime who got shot and died. Someone who was killed committing an act of committing a crime against another person who used a firearm to defend themselves against that person. That would be included in that 40,000 number. Mass shootings aren't the main problem. I agree. They receive huge attention for obvious reason. This is the third fact. They are horrific, but they're also not primary source of gun violence. In 2019, for example, only about 1 out of every 400 gun deaths was a result of a mass shooting. Okay. Defined as any attack that was at least 4 deaths. More than half of gun deaths are from suicides. Yes. And Margot Sanger Katz of the Times has noted. Still, many policies that experts say would reduce gun deaths, like requiring gun license background checks, would likely affect both mass shootings and the larger problem. Likely? So that's what we're basing this on? That's what we're basing trying to strip people of their rights. The likelihood that it would improve or prevent deaths. People who are determined to commit suicide, right? And thank you for acknowledging that more than half of the number of gun deaths are attributed to suicide. Thank you for pointing that out. Those people would likely still have ended up committing suicide, whether they were able to obtain an illegal firearm. If there were more restrictions on firearms, they would have likely found a way to kill themselves, okay? They would have gotten an illegal firearm. They would have jumped off a tall building. They would have done something other than just a gun, okay? You don't need a gun to kill yourself. And so if there was work put into suicide prevention, if they focused more on that instead of trying to strip you of your rights, then maybe we could reduce the amount of gun deaths. Maybe we could significantly reduce the number of gun deaths if we put more focus on suicide prevention as opposed to right prevention. Okay? So this guy, public opinion is complicated. Yes. An overwhelming majority of Americans support many gun regulation proposals like background checks. That's bullshit too, because the sample size is small. The survey sample is small, and they're asking a bunch of uninformed, ignorant people. And not only that, they're not asking about, there's already background checks. Background checks already exist. See, these people that they're surveying, they're not asking them about background checks. They're asking them about background checks that already exist. They're not mentioning universal background checks, which would include a background check for a transfer from a private person to another private person, private sales, any number of other gun shows, right? So they're not asking about that. They're not even mentioning that in these surveys. So this is just dishonest. And yes, the campaign donations of National Rifle Association influenced the debate. Okay. But the main reason that members of Congress feel comfortable blocking gun control is that most Americans don't feel strongly enough about the issue to change their vote because of it. No, it's because most Americans do not want you infringing on their rights any further, especially now today, especially after what happened last year with all the restrictions and with all the releasing of motherfuckers from prison, all the violent offenders, and a sense that our government cannot protect us. You know what I'm saying? If something bad were to happen, which is why you saw a surge in gun sales. And most people who voted for these politicians that put this gun control into place had no idea that they had to pass a background check or had to wait 10 days or whatever the case may be. They had no idea. They couldn't just go and get their gun just like that. They had no idea. Most people are ignorant to the number of gun laws that exist because they were never interested in guns in the first place. They just, you know what I mean? So now they're more aware. They're learning more about it. And now, and it's not just that, it's not because they don't care enough, they don't feel strongly enough not to vote for it. No, it's because they don't want it. They're realizing they don't want it, and they're realizing that the government is trying to strip them of their rights and create victims of them and leave them hanging at the same time. They understand that they will not be